It's the Lakes area's most wanted. We are cleaning up the criminals in our area and need your help. Have you seen any of these people?
Christian Lee Clark, 35. He's a white male, 5 feet 9 inches tall, 140 pounds with hazel eyes and brown hair. He has 2 warrants out for misdemeanor theft by issue of worthless checks. Rhonda Darlene Hansen, 46. She's a white female, 5 feet 10 inches tall, 175 pounds with blue eyes and blonde hair. She has 2 warrants out for misdemeanor theft by issue of worthless checks. Fabian Wayne English, 23. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall, 184 pounds with green eyes and black hair. He's wanted for felony vehicle theft. Ashley Marie Erickson, 25. She's 5 feet 5 inches tall, 125 pounds with blue eyes and blonde hair. She has 2 warrants out for misdemeanor theft by issue of worthless checks.
The Lakes area's most wanted. We're cleaning up the streets. Remember, if you see any of these people, do not approach them. Call your local law enforcement office. And now, a word from our area law enforcement.
We're doing emergency vehicle operations training for the Sheriff's Department, our, driving training. Basically, the state requires that each officer has a minimum of 8 hours of driving training every 3 years. Part of that has to be classroom, part of it has to be behind the wheel. The American Crystal Sugar Company has been kind enough to borrow us one of their beet piling platforms just south of Hitterdal, and myself and my partner, Deputy Steve Visti, are up here and doing the driving portion of the training today. And what we're trying to do is get the drivers to instinctively try to drive around obstacles rather than solely relying on their brakes. So we put up design courses that provide them the opportunity where they have to drive around things instead of just solely relying on their brakes. And we also have one where they have to brake and stop within a predetermined distance. And we also do things where we're giving the officers practice and backing up in areas which have limited space. And obviously we're using orange traffic cones so that limits or eliminates the damage. It's a lot easier on our cars to hit a traffic cone than it is something that's a little more stationary and solid. Each officer will be up here today and getting 4 hours of training behind the wheel. We'll also put on some mock pursuits in which the officers will get to experience what it's like to, as close as we can, to be in a pursuit. The effects of the emergency equipment, the lights and the sirens, what it's like to be actually chased and aid them in the decision-making process when it comes to high-speed pursuits. Some of the speeds that the cars reach, especially on the evasives, will get them up to 50, 55 miles an hour, and they've got to make a decision on picking a lane within 60 feet. Testing speeds are at 40 miles an hour.
Right. 50 miles an hour. Left. That's what we like to see. Perfect.
In the real world, what we're trying to do is get these guys to make these decisions instinctively, because if you have to stop and think about it when an obstacle's there, if you have to stop and think about it, you're going to crash. So it needs to be instinctive, and the only way to do that is through repetition. The more you repeat, just automatically putting steering input into the car, you're hopefully going to be able to avoid that obstacle. And we're also putting in here some of the obstacles that the spaces are tight and the speeds aren't that high, but it gives them a little idea what's going on with the car as far as weight transfers and weight shifts, and the effect that has on the cars as far as when it comes to steering and braking. Because the more steering input you put into a car, the less you can apply the brakes, and vice versa. The more you use the brakes, the less steering input you can put on these cars and still maintain control. So the whole idea here is to give the officers training and experience and putting in the maximum amount of steering and brake input and still maintain control of the car, so when they get out into the real world, that is instinctive and make it safer not only for the motoring public but also for the officers.
Thank you for watching the Lakes Area's Most Wanted.